Welcome back. My guest on the program is the Shadow Minister for Energy and Water Utilities, Steve Dickson. Steve, your father, your grandfather had been involved in local politics up in central Queensland. Moving to Brisbane and entering into caravan parks. When your grandfather stay up north? Did he move down with you, or had he already passed on? Was it a whole family that made the move?
No, Pa moved down to Brisbane probably 3 or 4 years before we did. He moved to Redcliffe, and Dad bought the farm off him, and nobody knew we were going to have a drought, so it was a bit of a family tradition, and consequently they sold the farm and moved down to Brisbane. My grandfather was a councillor for just on 32 years. Dad only did the one term. He basically took over when Pa left. Okay. And when he left that area, he moved away from politics, and I'd never ever given politics a thought in my life. You know, it was all about making a quid in private enterprise, and that's the path that I went down. And until I got involved in politics, and that was in 2000. So
why wasn't there that connection for you with such a history of politics in your family? Was it a political family at home?
I didn't really know too much about it. Yeah. No, not at all. Not at all. Pa was a very, very unusual fellow. When he married my grandmother, he couldn't read and write. And you know, he's a guy that was born in 1887. Yeah. So he lived to be the ripe old age of 93 as well. But you know, my grandmother educated him, and he was a really good, honest, strong man. And I suppose maybe I've got some of that in my genes. I'm happy that I have.
You would be happy if you did, wouldn't you?
I think I might have.
Yeah. So moving to Brisbane, why caravan parks? What was that opportunity that sort of inspired your father?
I have no idea. It was just, I think anything that they can make a quid of. Dad was one of those people, if there was a quid to be made in it, he'd jump on board and get into it. You know, I remember at one stage he went and bought himself a bulldozer and decided he was going to start, become a bulldozer driver as well as owning the caravan park. He had free time. Yeah, we got to that point where they'd employed a lot of staff, and he just enjoyed getting out on the bulldozer clearing land. He enjoyed it.
Do you remember what his process was to identify an opportunity, and do you see how that's kind of permeated into your life experiences?
I actually do. I think it's a natural progression. He got me into doing any little bit of work around the caravan park, and it was something I learned, and he paid me for doing things. And I think what he inspired me to do was to know if you got out and you worked hard, you'd be rewarded for it. And it didn't matter what you did, as long as you did it extremely well, people would recognise that. And it's something that I've done throughout my whole life. It doesn't matter what you do in this world, if you do it well, you'll be rewarded for it. That's the way life works.
There's an industry that mightn't be completely dead these days, but it's certainly downsized, caravan parks. You yourself have made a successful career. What was it about caravan parks that was such an opportunity for you, and why the change?
Well, it was very easy for me. I grew up in the industry. I knew it back to front, and we went and borrowed $1.25 million when I got married. I got married in 1986. That's when we bought our first caravan park at Nestland at Tingalpa. I think there was 145 sites. When we sold the park in '93, we had 245 sites. Yeah. So it was a large caravan park. We were turning over about $13,000 a week at that time, and that's pretty good money.
How do you convince a bank to give a 24-year-old a loan of $1.1 million? I dare say you probably would have had a few problems getting a loan for a car, for example.
It's called collateral. The collateral was in the business, and it's like anything you do these days. And I think that's what's gone wrong with the global economy. There is so much collateral, but there's more money. The point I make is use this glass of water as value. Say it's worth $100, and then somebody says, well, I'm going to give you $200 for it. That's a bad investment. And that's what we're finding out now on a global basis in the United Kingdom and throughout all of Europe. People have lent far too much money for that $100 glass of water. They'd probably paid $400. Now somebody wants their money back. Economic sense is not hard.
Is it possible for the world to recover from this? Because this is a system that has continued to grow and prosper, for want of a better way of describing it, and now the whole house of cards is falling down. Is there a way out of this financial mess?
Shaun, you've got to remember you're talking to a farmer's son now. I'm not going to fix the problems of the world, but the one thing I will make a point of saying is that people have got us into this situation. They've known exactly what they're doing. They've borrowed way beyond their means, and somebody's got to pay the piper, and that time is now, and it's here. And it's very, very similar to Queensland. We have a debt in Queensland today of $85 billion. We're going to pay that debt back at some stage. You just can't keep blowing it out, or we will become Europe, and that just can't be allowed to happen. I mean, that's what I enjoy about being in politics. I can use my business background, and I can tell you now, I know a bargain when I see one, and I know a dog when I see one too. You don't buy bad investments, and you don't invest in bad investments. You've got to make sure that you're financially responsible and a product is viable. That's how the world works.
Mm-hmm. Your career as what do you call somebody who runs a caravan park?
I suppose you can call me an entrepreneur.
Yeah, okay.
Because I've been in vineyard and wineries too.
Well, I mean, you were very successful running the caravan park, and you pretty much retired mid to late 30s. You've run a vineyard up in Montville. There must have been a lot of things that you could do with your time in retirement or semi-retirement. Making that decision to go back into politics and take on an 18-hour day, 7-day-a-week job, were you bored? Was there really that much of a desire to put back in? Because life must have been pretty good.
I think you talk to anybody who retires at any stage in their life, go a year down that path and they're going to say, I want to do something else.
Yeah.
You know, you can only play so much golf or you can only fish so much. I mean, you know, when it gets down to it, I'm still a reasonably young man. I'm 49 years old today, and I think I've got a lot to offer, and I think I'll work until the day I die. You know, you don't stop. You know, why? Why stop? You've got a lot of time to rest when you're dead.
You remember that day when you actually thought, oh, hang on, I think this is a bad idea. I need to be getting out. Because, I mean, I'm thinking that you were actually pretty focused on getting to that stage where you could retire, because that would be part of the driving force to be able to get to that point where you do that. To suddenly turn around and go, oh, actually, changed my mind. What was it that allowed you to go back the other way and get back in there?
I think it's the way politicians have treated people, and I think it's about the policies that they put in place. I think we're not living in the country that I grew up in. You know, today we don't have the same opportunities that I had and probably you had as a young man. Yeah. You know, we don't have fireworks nights anymore. They've gone because it's far too dangerous. Kids can't play on swings the way they used to play on swings because they're too dangerous. You know, we're wrapping the world in cotton wool today, and the world that I grew up in is not the same. I think the opportunity that young people have today has probably gone out the door a lot to what we had. And that saddens me, because kids need to fall over, they need to scratch their knee, they need to find out what the world's really like. And I think some of the problems that I do see out there today, I think a lot of young people have lost respect for themselves and for their parents and for society in general. And I blame us as politicians to a certain extent. You know, the pendulum has swung far too far in one direction.
I made a point a couple of years ago on this program that I thought that part of the problems in our society is the fact that children, as you say, growing up, see the way politics and the way big business run, and they lose respect for that process, and that actually lends a tone to the way they see themselves in the world. That discipline and respect for self and others doesn't exist in the top end in a lot of ways, and it's very hard for us to bring our children up knowing that at the top end it's really not like that.
I think you're absolutely right. I can't deny it. And that is a part of why I'm involved in politics today. I do want to make a difference. I want to make the world a better place. And I'm not going to be able to do it by myself. It's all of us. You know, it's the community, it's the politicians, it's the law enforcement. Everybody's got to pull their weight. I saw a really interesting article in Australia a couple of days ago, and it was a mundane type topic. 12% of eggs eaten in this country today are grown in people's backyards. People are actually having chickens in their backyards again. And we've gone away from that sort of thing, and maybe we're going back into it. And we've got a little bit of an issue happening in my electorate. A couple of streets, they've started growing vegetable gardens on the footpaths. Wow. And it's a local community that have got together, and it's just something they're starting to do. Yeah. And they're calling it street gardens. And I admire them. I think this is a way back, I suppose, back to the future.
How long before it becomes illegal to do that?
It shouldn't be. It should never be illegal. Yeah. You know, the people at the end of the day, they own the government. The public own the government. Don't ever forget it. That's what elections are all about. You get to vote in either the goodies or the baddies, but it's up to you. You know, it's all in the public's hands at the end of the day. They should never forget it.
Yeah, very much so. It's interesting to hear you say that. My guest on the program is the member for Buderim, Steve Dickson, and we'll be back after the break.